The United Nations nuclear watchdog says Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia facility has been cut off from its last external electricity supplies. Europe's largest nuclear power plant is now relying only on a reserve power line. Controlled by the Russian forces, the station is located near the front line in southern Ukraine. A team of experts from the International Atomic Energy Agency is monitoring the site, which was damaged in the fighting. Let's cross over to Paul Norman, a professor of nuclear physics and nuclear energy at Birmingham University. The IAEA says the nuclear facility is now relying on a reserve line for power. Is this a cause for concern?
It's certainly a slightly elevated cause for concern than we had previously. I still believe that the chances of some sort of widespread nuclear incident are pretty small. But the issue with the power lines is that you require electrical power in order to provide cooling to the reactor. That would be to stave off a sort of meltdown type situation. And what we had is so you have the main power lines, which are now off. You have a reserve power line, which is where we are at the moment. And then you have backup diesel generators as your sort of last main option, if you like. So obviously we've knocked out one of the three. So I think, that raises the level a little bit.
So after the last stage, the backup, there's nothing else? Are there any other measures that are in place or protocols in case of a meltdown?
No, those are the main real backup mechanisms. As long as those backup diesel generators are working, there are typically quite a number of them. So you'd have to have all of them wiped out. They would have to they'd have to run out of fuel. So you have, a number of protective layers. Also, you need to bear in mind that if you have that type of situation, there's not going to be a lot of power to send any of the radioactive material anywhere. So it would have to sort of melt through the reactor's vessel and get through containing layers in order to get out to the surroundings.
What are the risks of nuclear power plants in general in wartime?
Yeah, it depends very much on the type of reactor and those various sort of protective systems and physical parts of the system that it has in play. Typically, the sort of main type of reactors, which is similar to the ones that we're seeing in Zaporizhzhia, they have very thick protective concrete layers, meters thick of concrete, and they have a steel pressure vessel, which is sort of 25 centimeters thick of steel. So the reactor itself is actually very well protected. It would be difficult to fire on the reactor and damage it significantly. You could, though, have damage occur to other parts of the site where radioactive material is kept. And as we say, you could have a loss of power to cooling systems that causes the reactor to overheat. If that happens, though, you still have to have some sort of breach of these protective layers for things to get out to the environment. And as I say, one key thing I think there is that the system is likely to be at low power. So it's very different from the Chernobyl accident, where the sort of poor design, the bad design of the reactor, it was unstable, caused a big explosion that then sent things, very high up into the atmosphere as a plume that was then swept around larger parts of Europe. So, it's difficult to imagine a scenario quite like that at the moment.
Paul Norman, thank you very much for putting this into perspective for us from Birmingham University. Before the Russian invasion in February, Ukraine had gained a reputation for its thriving nightlife. One of the most popular clubs was K41 in the capital, Kyiv. The venue hosted DJs from around the world. Now, 6 months since Russia's invasion, the beats are back, but this time outdoors and a little earlier due to Kyiv's 11 p.m. curfew.
It's mellow at K41, a soft rebirth of the famous Kiev club. They've put on parties in the garden for a few weeks now. The first green shoot of a normal life abruptly halted by Russian rockets 6 months ago. And despite the relief of being in a group at a party, there's a certain ambiguity. Everyone knows that the war is continuing.
From moral side, I still don't know if we allow it to have fun during the wartime, It's something I still don't know.
Before the war, K41 was inside and intense. Organizers gave DW this rare pre-war footage. Now they are outside and it all looks different. But the feeling of inclusion has expanded. It's a place of refuge for the more mainstream as well as the queer community.
This place is like my second home, so I feel here real better than everywhere else.
Most of my friends are mentally broke, so I don't see happy emotions on their faces.
The gathering offers more than respite for those who attend. Organizers say they send all the money raised to help others.
We help financially directly to people from our community who in need, And we also help some other initiatives. Last event we collected money for repair initiative who repair houses in Chernihiv.
Evening draws in, curfew approaches, and the party is over. Back into everyday wartime, but knowing they're not alone.